Hi everyone, I'm Alex, the product manager at Poly API. Today I'm going to walk you through our features for automated testing with Poly. This will be a two-part process. First, we'll start here inside Visual Studio Code, where I'll show you how to create a custom server function for logging and error handling. Next, I'll take you to Postman, where we'll utilize the Poly Management APIs to enable logging, create a scheduled job, view job executions, and review on a per function basis custom log statements for troubleshooting. Let's get started. So for this demo, we're going to test two of Stripe's popular APIs, pre-trained as public functions. We have the create payment method and create customers. Now let's take a look at our custom server function, test Stripe flow. This custom server function is made to handle errors and log information, which is great for troubleshooting issues with our APIs. So first, the function begins by initializing necessary credentials and test data. It uses a feature called vari, which is short for variables, which securely injects credentials like access token. Additionally, it initializes test data like card token and card type. The script then attempts to create a payment method. It awaits a response from the payment method's create function, passing the access token, card type, and card token. Now we have handling the API response. This if statement checks the status of the response of the API call. We have the payment method response status, which contains the HTTP status code returned by the API call. So the condition, if the response status is not 200, indicating success, the script logs an error, test1 create payment method failed with the status code, and exits. Note here we are using a feature within Poly API's security functions, Poly Custom Response Status Code, as a way to set the response for a custom function. And now we have logging success. If successful, it logs the success, test1, create payment method succeeded with the status code, and extracts the payment method ID. Next, the function attempts to create a customer using another API call to Stripe, create customers. It passes in the same access token and payload containing the payment method ID. And now we have the final response handling and logging. Similarly to the payment method creation, this section handles the response from the customer creation API call. It checks the status code and logs an error or success message accordingly. And lastly, we have deploying to the Poly server. We'll run a command to deploy the custom function to the Poly server. So let's go ahead and copy this command and paste it in our terminal. So what we're doing is adding our custom function, test Stripe flow, under the context Stripe tests from our file, stripe custom function.ts, to the server. Great, now we have our recently deployed custom server function, test Stripe flow. We can view our recently deployed custom server function in our Poly library under Stripe tests. We have our test Stripe flow server function added. Now, let's navigate to Postman, where we will enable logging and create a job, automating the testing for our server function. So here we are inside Postman, where I have the Poly Management API collection. First, we want to view the recently deployed custom server function, test Stripe flow. So let's go to the server function folder and click View All. Now let's hit Send. And as you can see, we have a recently deployed custom server function, test Stripe flow, with its unique ID, the description, the context in which it's stored under Stripe tests, the visibility set to environment, and logs enabled set to false. Next, we'll want to enable logging by making a patch on the server function resource. So let's go over to the left and click Update. Under the body, we'll want to set logs enabled to true. This will enable it to collect custom log statements from console log statements in our custom function. So in order to update our function, we'll need to go back to View All and set the function ID to our environment. Go back to Update and click Send. As you can see in the response, our logs enabled has now been updated to true. And finally, we'll want to copy the function ID for the next steps in creating a job. Now let's navigate to the jobs endpoint, where we can create a job that will run a scheduled test on our custom function testStripe_flow. So over on the left, we'll navigate to the jobs folder and click Create. Under the body, we'll want to input the details like schedule, name, function settings, execution type, and enabled. So first we have schedule, where we need to decide the timing for the job execution. You have the following options to choose from. We have periodical, interval, and on time. We'll select periodical for jobs that need to run at predetermined times, such as specific hours on certain days. This is ideal for tasks that require execution at regular fixed points in time. And then we have interval. We'll use this to monitor logs at more frequent time intervals, like every hour or every few minutes. It's suitable for tasks that need to be performed regularly, but not tied to specific calendar dates or times. And then we have on time. We'll opt for this when you need a job to run just once at designated time. This is perfect for one-off tasks that require execution at a particular moment, but not repeatedly or regularly. And now we'll want to update the value of our job. You also need to give your job a name, like testStripe. And lastly, we have the execution type. We have sequential and parallel to choose from. Sequential we'll use when the sequence in which functions are executed is important. Each function will run one after another, ensuring that the order of operations is maintained. And then we have parallel. We'll choose this option when functions are capable of running independently and at the same time. So let's go ahead and create our job. As you can see in the response, we have our newly created job, testStripe. Now that we created our job, we can keep track of how it performs each time it runs using the job execution endpoint. So in order to monitor our specific job, we'll first set the ID, which is essential for tracking this specific job's execution. Next, we'll navigate to the job's execution folder, where records of each execution are stored using the job's execution endpoint. Let's click Send to see all executions for our job. And here you can see for our job execution, we had a fatal error. So after viewing the job executions, we can use the logs endpoint for tracking the function's performance and debugging issues. So what we'll need to do is set the ID of the function we want to review for logs. Now let's navigate to the logs endpoint within the logs folder, click View, and click Send. The log should contain the output from any console log statements you added. So as you can see, our test 1 create payment method failed with status code 400. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code and fix this error. So for this demo, I purposely left the card token as an empty string. So let's go ahead and fix this and redeploy our custom server function. Now let's navigate back to Postman and try this again. So what we want to do is update our job and set a new scheduled time. Now let's click Send. So now we have our job updated. And let's view the job executions once it's run. So we'll navigate back to the job executions folder and click View. So now let's click Send to see all job executions. And here you can see in the response, we have our most recent job execution with the status code 200. So now let's view the logs for this function. We'll navigate back over to our logs folder, click View, and click Send. And as you can see, we have our logs for our most recent job execution. Test 1, create payment method succeeded with status code 200. And we also have our logs for test 2, create customer succeeded with status code 200. And that's our automated testing process. It ensures our server functions at Poly API are robust and reliable. Thank you for joining me in this demo. Feel free to reach out with any questions.